a right to a clean and healthy environment, but we also have a duty to safeguard the same. But we tend to stop it at we have a right to use and to health the environment and the like. But most of the time, we don't look at that responsibility. UNEP is very clear this year, and when you look at the theme for the year, it talks about the only one earth which we have. And that means we must share with not only other humans, but other living things within the earth. But we must take responsibility to take care of the same environment, or to take care of Mother Nature, so that Mother Nature can continue providing the resources which we need for our survival. So that's my introduction. Different parts of the world, we are facing different challenges at different scales. When you talk about loss of biodiversity, we talk about global warming, we talk about climate change, we talk about the pandemics, we talk about globalization, we talk about poverty and even inequality within the different parts of the world. But what does it mean moving into the future? Globally and act locally. I give reference to the challenges to do with the coronavirus, and also looking at it from a global perspective and globalization. It has spread so fast because of our connection. We must think about, the developed modes of communication and also modes of transport, and the critical role they play either to save Mother Nature or to destroy Mother Nature. So it's a challenge, and I'm moving now to my slide number 2, based on the same. So we might think of it in terms of our country. We might think of it in terms of the US. We might think of it in terms of China. We might think of it in terms of Asia and what it spells. When you look at Lake Nakuru, the rising water levels poses a great threat to the survival of the flamingos. You look at Naivasha and what's happening around Lake Naivasha, because Naivasha is so famous, not only because of the town, but for flower farming. Look at what's happening around Hell's Gate and Menengai. There is great potential to exploit the geothermal power, but the exploitation comes at what cost? We cannot have thousands of geothermal wells being drilled within this because Rift Valley is a very weak zone again. So what does it spell into the future? You might think about Hell's Gate, we are killing it. A lot of activities happening there, a lot of activities happening around it. But in the future, then what will it mean? Think about the locusts which invested our country sometimes last year and 2 years back, and what it means. The extended or the prolonged drought and predictable weather patterns and the like, and all that. Think about the great population. I don't want to bring politics into this, but every time now, because we are in that campaign mood, but does it bother you when you see hundreds or thousands people attending the political rallies every day? And in all parts of this country, that's what's happening. The youth, the women, and the like. So do we ever think about what does it mean? It's not about people attending the rally, but the level of people who are not employed or people who are idle and they're just looking for a place to pass time. What does it mean into the future? Think about the slum areas, not only in Nakuru, not only in Naivasha, not only in Nairobi, but what does it spell? And we say poor people, they tend to bear the biggest actually burden of unsustainability. Not only in Africa, when we have volcanoes, we have tsunamis, we have like hurricanes, like what happens in the US. The poor people, they tend to bear the greatest burden of all this. So we must be able to think and see what's the future. So the numerous challenges we are facing, the world has been able to come together and think about how they can be able to address them. And that's how they came up with the Sustainable Development Goals, which we are expected to meet them by the year 2030. But as a country, what are we doing to be able to address all these? Or as teachers, which sustainable goals really concern us most? And it might be SDG number 4, which talks about education. And they say it might be the goal which will be more impactful when you think about all the other sustainable goals. So moving on. So what is sustainability, or what is sustainable development? I think Mwangi defined that word quite well. And this is development which will help us to meet the needs of the current generation without compromising the future generation from meeting their own needs. So when you talk about that, Lake Nakuru, if you look at, you think of the trends of Nakuru town over time, there's no way we are going to increase this earth by even an inch, but the human population is growing. But how do we make sure today, tomorrow, and even decades to come, or centuries to come, future generations will be able to enjoy the same services, or will be able to get the same resources from our ecosystem, from our different areas? When you are born, probably you are only 2 or 3 in the family. Today, you have become grown-ups. The land which your dad used to own has been able to subdivide it among the 3 of you or the 10 of you. But you must till the same land and be able to provide for your family and feed your family. If you had 10 acres today, probably you have 3. But you must be able to feed your family. You must be able to raise livestock within the same land. But it means you must think about how to increase productivity and make sure you don't even harm the land again, so that it can continue giving you more food. Lake Nakuru, more people in the town, more sewage, more solid waste. We are clearing the mouth, then the water level will go down, or there's so much waste which is being brought into the lake. What does it spell into the future? And I say development is about making that positive change. It must be a positive change when we talk about development. We have the big highway which is being built to connect Mau Summit and Nairobi. But during the construction period, and even the time we'll start utilizing the road, then what will it mean for the environment? How many trees have we been able to cut down? We've increased the efficiency. We have been able to improve the connection between the 2 areas, or even further to the border and beyond. But what does it spell for this country? The environment, our economy, it has opened up new areas. I'm sure the rent rates have gone up, which lie besides the big road there. But what does it mean for the environment? What does it mean for the future? So sustainability or sustainable development is built around 3 spheres. But before I move into that, I'd probably like to hear from some of you about, I'll pick 2 people, I think Towet and probably John Mwangi. We've heard about the story of creation from the Bible. But what about us? Mr. Mwangi, What does your creation story, how does it actually sound? Where did your grandparents tell you they came from? They come from heaven, or how did the origin of your tribe come into being? I'll hear it from Wangi. I like to hear from Towet, from our community. Like, where did they come from? Were they given some rules by whoever brought them to this world? Mwangi, anything? Sorry, James Juguna? James Juguna? Okay, go on, James. You can unmute. You can unmute. Unmute, please.
Yes.
Go on. Tell us about your creation story.
First of all, let me appreciate the fact that you have mentioned something that I've read 1,001 times in the Bible, but at no time did I ever think that the same excerpt can be used to teach on, conservation. And it kept me thinking, and until this time you're calling me to, shed some light on the same. Now, I didn't look at it as God creates food for man. He creates the environment. The Tigris and the Euphrates rivers are flowing down. And then he puts man in charge and tells him to take care of the garden and to eat thereof whatever the earth produces. And I think there is a lot of learning, so rich, so enriching to us today, even to learn that in our Christian circles, the subject of conservation for sustainability is something that cannot be, we cannot overemphasize, because we read it right from the creation story, that the first thing we see God creates is everything and the ecosystem and whatever surrounds man for his own upkeep. And therefore, coming towards polluting the same that God has given to us is something unfortunate. And I think it's high time we raise to the occasion and try to become ambassadors of trying to tell others around us that conservation is indeed for our sustainable generations today and tomorrow, so that we have something to hang on. And our generations have also something to hang on come years to come, because we don't know how long the earth may take. We look at it from a scientific point of view, or even from the Christian point of view. I think we need the earth more than anything else today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. James, for that. You can mute. Thank you for the contribution. So we must always think about, try to connect that with the science and rethink. And I'll be able to highlight about how we can be able to implement ESD within our school curriculum. But I like to ask another question. Looking at my spheres, talk about the three spheres now: the society, the environment, and the economy, or the economical sphere. And even in terms of the creation, either our local stories about creation, our biblical stories, or the creation based on the Quran, it's all the same. And most of the time you find whoever created, whichever community or whichever believers, get them treasures to use for their life. But there's always a commandment that we must take care of that. You till the land is fertile, feed yourselves, but you must be able to take care of the same so that it can feed you for many other generations. But I always wonder, especially based again on the Bible, why God had to separate the water from the land. And when you look at it, he created plants before animals. He created plants before animals and the like. He had to separate the water from the land, and he put, the creation based on a certain, sequence. Have you ever thought about why? But I'll be able to answer that, because if plants or animals came before the animals, then the animals could not survive, because plants have to get the nutrients from the soil. They have to use the carbon dioxide to make the food, and they have to release the oxygen, which sustains the animals. That's the main connection. So there was a sequence. It didn't just put it. When you think about it in terms of that, I think it will always give you those hints and why we need to do that. And then we need a bigger sphere to be able to sustain human society. And as humans, depending on where we are coming from, and depending on our level of education, we determine how we are going to utilize the environmental sphere. Think about NAIVASHA NAKURU area. Mwangi asked you about the activities which are undertaken within that. You talked about fishing. So the fishermen, we see Lake NAIVASHA as a source of food for them, or a source of livelihood in terms of the fish. People are doing horticulture. They don't care about the fish, but they only care about the water which they are getting from the lake to irrigate their plants. The local community, if we have some more people living around that area, they think about Lake NAIVASHA in terms of the water they can get to sustain themselves and to sustain their livestock. The scientists will look at it from a perspective of evaporation and the water cycle. And think about the connection, the forest people. We say there are so many government agencies which are managing Lake NAIVASHA. Without the MAU, without the Ambadeas, we don't have the NAIVASHA, and we don't have Lake Elmendaita as well as Nakuru. And again, the local population within the town, they might not care much. They might destroy and direct all the sewage into the lakes. But in the future, it will still come back to harm us. So we must be able to think about that connection. The human society, people coming from far and wide. If it's Emmanuel, I only see Nakuru and I see flamingos and the beautiful, wildlife within the same. And I make trips to Nakuru to enjoy the beauty, the beautiful scenery, the biodiversity. KWS is thinking about how to take care of that wildlife. If you look at the county government, they're thinking about how they can be able to tap from that rich resource, Lake Nakuru, Lake NAIVASHA. But we're asking a question again. If Mao is gone, then what does it spell for the lakes? So we must be able to strike a balance between the three spheres. And you cannot separate the three spheres from each other. So when too much, we talk about pollution. When we put too much in terms of our end products into the environment, we talk about pollution. When we get so much from nature, especially we have in the trees, then we talk about deforestation. Then as humans, how do we share with each other? People living upstream, do they care about the kind of farming they're undertaking? People living around Menengai, people living in Eburu area, people living in Mau, people living on the other side of Longonot, then do we care about the activities we are undertaking? Because what happens upstream affects what is happening downstream. And now we start now talking about the blue economy. So as humans, we only care about ourselves if you are doing like the horticultural farming. And do we care about the fertilizers we are using? Do we care about the chemical which we are using? We must be able to use products which are more environmental friendly, which don't harm the same environments. When we are doing deforestation, then do we think about how it will come to affect us or to affect the connected ecosystems? So we must be able to think about all this, and that's the only way we can be able to maintain sustainability. And I said, let's not only think about the conservation, let's also think about how we can tap from the same. People in NAKURU, can they be allowed to do beekeeping? Can we try the pellet system of farming so that we can utilize the forest, but take care of it? But Kenyans, I say, we are very smart, and sometimes we outsmart ourselves. The pellets and the shamba system, because you must grow the trees to a certain height and then you have to move to another area. But if we don't, people make sure we cut the taproot and the trees will never attain the height which has been recommended. So we can take longer within our forest. So we must be able to think about all that. We think about the laws and the policies which are being made by our government. How can we be able to influence that so that we can achieve sustainability at the county level, at the world level, at the national level, and even at global level, because there's a certain percentage which we must be able to maintain in terms of our forest cover, the 10%. Mwangi talked about the Ramsar site, very important and critical bird conservation areas. But if we destroy Lake Nakuru, we destroy Lake Naivasha and Mentaita, and the flamingos are gone and many other birds, then we might lose that status. So we must be able to think about all that. The equity, not equality, maybe. How do we share our resources together? How do we share our forests together? How do we maintain them for the benefit of all of us? So environmental pillar, I think just an explanation there. It talks about our natural environment and all what it contains, both renewable resources and non-renewable resources. And it also talks about the life support system, our biogeochemical processes and the like, and how they influence our natural environment, our society, and even our economy. We're talking about, pollution. We need the industries, but they come at what cost? Our sewage plants. We can direct the water to Lake Nakuru, but can we treat the sewage before we can be able to release it into Lake Nakuru or Lake Naivasha and the like? Because when you talk about the increase in the nutrients within our lakes, we talk about eutrophication, and we'll see presence of algae. We'll have problem to do with the water hyacinth and many other. And with that, it means it might end up killing the same fish which we want to depend on. The social pillar, it talks about our society. And as humans, we must be able to respect each other. We must also respect nature. And Wangari Maathai put it very well. So we need to think always about human nature interrelationships and be able to maintain a balance between the two. We must think about each other. If we are harvesting the fish from the lake, then we are harvesting the fish at what cost? So we must be able also to, once again, people going to Lake Nakuru. If we have millions of tourists going to Lake Nakuru, then what does it mean for that fragile ecosystem? So we must talk about sustainable tourism. We must talk about ecotourism. As we think about some of the activities we can introduce into the lake, if we want to use sport hunting, or we want to, to use, being there and we are going out on a boat ride, then what does it spell for the same lake survival? So we must be able to maintain all that. I talked about the interconnection between the different ecosystems, because we are all interconnected, either through the rivers, either through the atmosphere because of the air we breathe, the pollution we make, because they say people in the Western world, if they pollute so much, then we might be the ones to bear the burden. We are harvesting the geothermal power, but it comes at what cost to the local people living in those areas? We cannot just drill boreholes within the Rift Valley because the ground is quite fragile. It's very sensitive. And even drilling boreholes, then it will come at what cost? So think about also about the economic pillar. We must be able to generate money by utilizing our natural resources. But what does it mean when it comes to water pollution, to solid waste pollution and the like? And you think about also how fair are we when it comes to taking care of the society? People working in those horticultural farms, people who are working as fishermen, are they paid fairly? And even when it comes to the use of the fertilizer and also the kind of chemicals we are using to spray them, it comes at what cost? Working within the greenhouses, warehouses. And people say, if you work in those cold storage places, sometimes you might not live for long because it affects you. But do the employers care? Do they care about, the same Lake Naivasha, from where they get the water from for watering their plants? I don't know whether Nini Flower Farm is still in existence, but I believe, and even homegrown, almost gone, I think most of the farms have been changing their names and the like. But they used to have a very elaborate way of doing farming. Even the way to control the pests, using processes which are more friendly to nature and all that. So we must be able to think about us as humans. And then activity we undertake, my last point there, it must be environmentally sound. It must be socially acceptable to the local community, economically viable. And this still boils down to our MCA. And that's why we have to undertake environmental audit so that we can be able to check the way we are affecting nature, the way other humans are affected by our activities, and even the way we are also gaining from the same. We cannot gain at the expense of nature. We cannot gain at the expense of the environment, and we can't gain at the expense of other people. And that's how we can be able to achieve sustainability. Kevin, I don't know in terms of time how well I'm doing, because I'm moving now to the main area. Are we doing well in terms of time? Right? We can continue. So what is education? And what does it pertain? But this is what you have been doing. But I talk about the process of imparting new knowledge, new skills, and values when it comes to morality, when it comes to social aspects, and also sometimes the values. And when you think about Kenya, I don't know where we are failing. Do we blame the teachers who have been teaching us? Do we blame our parents, or do we blame the current generation? And especially, and we have seen a lot of it, and also on social media, like the way people are killing each other, public, resources, they don't care. And the way our young people are behaving. It's a generation which does not respect laws and the like. It has to be all freestyle, but it comes at what cost? So teachers, are we failing? Teachers, are we failing? Or is the parents who are failing in this? Are we helping our students to reach their full potential? Look at what has been happening in our schools, like last term. You know, students burning our schools, students walking out of school and saying they have had enough and they don't want to learn anymore, and they have to go home and the like. And we had sometimes we were forced by the learners to close schools before time. So what has gone wrong with our society? Probably we can hear 2 or 3 reactions before we can move on to the next slide. So what is happening with our society?
Just raise your hand so that you can be unmuted and the like.
So who has failed? Is it the students? Is it the teachers? Is it the government in terms of the policies, or is it the parents? When you look at the current social challenges which we are facing. End reaction from the participants. You can put it in the chat. You can raise your hand. Or Kevin, you can call out some names. Not James, not John. We can hear from other teachers who are participating in the workshop. Or we can start with you, Kevin.
And the persons who have failed.
Yes. Is it the teachers? Is it the students? Or it's the parents?
I think everyone just has their own portions. I think the parents for being too busy to actually take care of their children, for the government for concerning itself so much on the results rather than actually lifting up their child to be an adult that is dependable. For the teachers being basically, I don't know how to blame the teachers because they are here. I can blame people who are not here. I can blame others, but once we are here, I can.
but I'm also a parent. I'm here, and you're blaming me.
No. You see, you can finish one-on-one eventually, but these other ones.
Let's hear from them then. Then we need a reaction. David is there. Wanyaga.
You can unmute, David.
Yeah, my contribution is that all of us has failed. The stakeholders have failed in the sense that if you look at the 3 pillars that we have just talked about, that is the environment, the social and economic pillars. It is upon all of us to ensure the environment that we are in, is it sustainable? When you talk about the social pillar, is it sustainable in our homes so that we can develop these values? At the same time, what is that we want to gain economically? Because if you look at the stakeholders, the mamas, our children are called kamamis by our same parents. How is the society? Like, let me give examples in NAKURU right now. Not only in NAKURU, even in other areas, we are talking about the gang. And this one, we are talking about the young kids, even from grade 4, they're involved in the gang. That tells you there is the issue of environmental issues that have to be addressed. Where is the government? Where is the teacher? And then the teacher, are we held, or do we have sustainable ways in which we can handle these issues? So to me, my observation is we have all failed. And I think this is the time for us to come together and sit together.
Thank you, Anyaga. Thank you, Anyaga. Another teacher who has a different perspective or wants to add into what we have heard from Mr. Anyaga?
Benjamin Kasusia says on the
chat.
In the chat, he says the community has failed in that everyone is always busy trying to benefit themselves. Joseph Omari says, I think all stakeholders have failed. All should put their heads together. James Nuguna says, I do not wish to dominate the talk, but my take is that failure is collective. Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. And lady, I think we need to hear from the ladies.
Mr. Resia, can hear from me. Teresia Kafui.
Another lady wants to act. So can I ask a question? Who has contributed to the failure? Is it the men or is the women? And then within a family setup?
Both.
Teresia, now is she there? She can unmute?
Yes, Teresia Kafu, you can unmute. Yeah, you are very low.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Yeah, I think both men and women have contributed. Both men and women have contributed.
Okay, right.
I see there is one comment. Lillian Wangui says, first failure is from parents tending to defend their children's mistake, but you have failed.
Okay, thank you so much. I've seen it's a new trend which is arising. I don't know whether you are experiencing it within your schools, but several areas in this country, we've seen women, they are taking a bigger role when it comes to raising the children, and especially the role of, well, sorry, you need to mute. Kevin, you can mute those people. Yeah, I've seen it. Actually, it's a new trend, and you find, I've been to several areas within this country, and you find now it's like how the women have been left to raise the children, even paying school fees. That's a new trend. I'm not seeing like the percentage. If I look, it's a new trend. I don't mean like 100% of the women are the ones who are doing this, but you know, a bigger percentage than the optimal level which we expect. You know, to be left at busy, I've seen most of the a lot of them, you know, you find people now, they're just chewing, is it the mirror and the new substance, which is the muguka. Very common, young people, you know, parents and the like. So what do we expect of this society? Think about whoever is selling the drugs to our children. And he wants to create a bigger market. Why, my Kevin?
There is something that somebody has said, James has said, just a minute. There is something that James has said that is interesting. He said that culturally, it's the man that has abdicated his leadership role. Mr. Emmanuel? Mr. Emmanuel?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry,
yes.
I had lost connection. Sorry for that. So I'm saying we paid more attention probably to the girl child, and we've forgotten about the boy child. And Wanyaga brought a very critical issue which we need to address. Though within our African culture, we don't talk about our social orientation. We don't talk about how to raise, you know, the boys, how to raise the men, how to raise, you know, the girls, whose role is it. We paid more attention to the girl child. We've neglected the boy child and all this. And I hope we can be able now to have a great voice on how we can be able to raise great boys and great girls within this society. So the issue of the orientation, even at school, you must be able to address it. But I know those are issues within our culture. you know, they are a bit, how will I put it? Very sensitive issues. That's how they are treated, and we really talk about the same. So be able to prepare our boys to be men. We must be able to prepare to be women. And through that, we can be able to have a great society. I have 10 minutes, right? Let me share my screen again. I hope it will be visible. Lost that. Share. So that's where we are. So education, the different levels are all connected, and we must be able to prepare our young learners for the same. If you prepare our students so well, I know CBC is trying, so I'm just going to talk about in the next few slides. At the entry level, the kindergarten, we must be able to prepare easy for our teachers within the primary school level. And it will also make the work easy for our teachers in the high school. But it has reached a point where we dropped most of the courses which are of critical importance to this country: agriculture, home science, and the like. Then these students is admitted, he has never done agriculture from primary. He's admitted to the university to undertake agriculture. It makes work very complicated. Home science, it teaches us about the morals, teaches about, you know, our welfare and how to take care of ourselves and even our homes and the like. You know, cleanliness and many others. Cannot be able even to fix a button or to sew a button because of that. We dropped art and craft, which are very critical causes or critical subjects within our country. We say agriculture is the backbone of our country, but we dropped agriculture. Why is it? We want our students to be more creative and innovative, but we dropped art and craft. We dropped music. What do you expect of the future? So ESD, I think, talks about, it's a new form of teaching. It doesn't mean it's an independent subject, but it just needs to be an holistic way of teaching. And it permeates within all our subjects. And that's why we say we can be able to teach ESD within our different subjects, whether maths, arts, whether languages, whether our religious education subjects, we can be able to do all that. And we pushed for the CBC. I think CBC was born out of our push from ESD aspects. And in a way, it has been able to achieve a little bit, but there are still challenges when it comes to the CBC. So when you look at it, ESD is of importance because when you think about sustainable goal number 4, then it talks about how it can be able to help the world to realize the other 16 sustainable development goals. Because SDG number 4 talks about education, quality education for the world. And UNESCO, which is the global body which spearheads the ESD implementation, it talks about ESD being a process through which we can be able to realize lifelong learning, being an integral part of quality education. But when you talk about quality, then what does it mean? Is it about the grades? We produce an A student who has no. We produce an A student who cannot be able to think about how to take care of the environment. We produce an A students who cannot make sense of the numbers, who cannot make sense of the connection between different aspects within the society or within nature. Then it must be holistic and it must be transformational. And that's what we talk about education. It must help me to change as a person. It must help me to change, to be able to fit within a society. It must be able to help me to contribute the country's agenda, to transform the world and the like. So we must be able to think about the different aspects or the different avenues through which we can be able to teach. And then Kenya as a country, I think through, I don't know how many people have been able to see this document. It's the policy, the ESD policy, which was launched in the year 2017. And within the document, it recognizes education and ESD being an integral part of quality education. And it's only through this document that we can be able to achieve sustainability. So what are the main objectives of ESD? I have very little time left, so will allow me to rush. So we must be able, the objectives, there are only 4. It talks about improving the quality, but in terms of what? Instead of teaching about 1 + 1 = 2, then you can think about the environment and the trees within the school. You can be able to count those trees or look at the trees which do so well within your school and your locality and be able to influence. It talks about the lifelong learning. I will learn it in school, how to manage waste, and I'll be able to practice all my lifetime. I must carry that through my life. I'll be able to take care of the waste. I'll be able to plant more trees. I'll be able to raise my voice when the government or the world is not paying attention to environmental or economic problems which we are facing. Then it talks about the orientation of education towards sustainability. I don't know how many of you practice this, but I know Wanyaga is very good at this. I think I've taught Wanyaga, we practiced ESD together. He has been able to win awards because of ESD. We must be hands-on and help students to pick this small aspect on sustainability. It's not about teaching to produce A students or first-class honors students who cannot be able to think about the environment, who does not care about the society. But we must be able to teach together. We can pick a theme for the week to be able to conservation. And through that, we can be able to help this government or the world to be able to realize sustainable development. We must be able to create public awareness and understanding. We don't want to create schools which are islands of ESD knowledge, but the people who live around that island are destroying the environment, or they cannot think about simple sustainability practices. So we must be able to influence, and teachers and our religious leaders, you have very, very great role within our society, because you can be able to influence mindsets. You can be able to change mindsets. You are the only people who can tell your students 1 + 1 = 2, and they obey without asking any question. The preacher the same, but we want our people like Kanyari. I believe the teacher who told him was very good, and he must be proud of that guy. But unfortunately, he also lose the knowledge. So we must be able to help people to understand. Are we helping people to see what they are doing to the environment, how they are harming the environment, and how they can be able to change their mindsets? So we must be able to think about all that. We must work together. Our students must be able to influence and play a critical role when it comes to conservation. Then we must also be able to build the capacity, and that's what we are doing today. And I believe after this training, you will be able to train many more teachers. You'll be able to also train your learners on sustainability and even practice what you have learned during the 2 days. So critically, we talk about that. I want to talk about the curriculum, and I bring out my cartoon there and ask yourselves whether we are still busy, we have been able to move forward. and then we react later. So our students, this cartoon, when you think of it, we must understand our students have different understanding level. They have different potentials. And that's why we cannot produce doctors, lawyers from the same. But we can also at the middle level, we can be able to teach them new skills, which they can be able to utilize to gain a livelihood out of the same. Victor, I don't know, your hand is up. You wanted to react? Sorry, so it just a mistake. That's Victor's hand is up. Sorry for that. So we must be able to understand as teachers and be able to teach. So if you give the same exam, you cannot expect your students to score the same marks. But the weak students, sometimes you might find they are strong in another aspect. So try, to empower them, to encourage them to explore their potential based on the areas where they are strong and the like. So that's a tweet I picked somewhere from KICD, and we are now in the CBC, but I tend to call it a cyber-based curriculum or computer-based curriculum. Our aspiration was to promote lifelong learning, to promote local-based learning. Teachers who have been implementing ESD, though I know it was rushed, but it might be the best system for this country. This is 844, which has just been reborn. That's how I'd like to put it. But we giving parents too much, too much burden. Students to do the simple activities, the take-home activities and the like. So do you think CBC is the best option for this country? It's a yes or no. You can put it in the chat. Is CBC the best option for this country? I can have like 2 people raise their hand and they can say yes or no and just give us some reason as to why they feel it's the best option for this country or it's not the best option. Any teacher who wants to react? Is CBC the best option or the best curriculum option for this country? Kevin, take on.
I can see Cecilia Wangombe says yes, it's learner-centered.
Thank you. Another reaction, either from the chat?
Galaxy Tab A, yes, it takes care of different gifting of learners.
Thank you for that. Then how different is it from 844?
Isaac, yes or no?
Is it different from 844 or is the same? Judy, do you want to react?
Maybe for person
I think
who
there's a chat there.
Yeah, Joseph Omari says it's very different. Cecilia says it's different. David says it's different from 844. I don't know how. Maybe they should explain how
different is it. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I want to get from them.
So Isaac Malanga, I want you to unmute so that you can explain to us how different it is from 844. You can unmute.
Hello, how are you?
Fine.
So Isaac, how is it different?
I think it's different because it is a runner-centered. It also enables to nurture the talent of this class. It also makes the runner to be innovative. And in many other ways about that, in school you can see that the runners are not taking part in this edition compared to it for your teacher was
okay.
For the curriculum.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I think Kevin, there are more chat messages. We can try that and then I move on. You can mute that person. David, you can mute.
Yes. Just a minute. Yes, Galaxy tab says,
I think a more chat.
Yes, so Galaxy tab says it's practical based as opposed to the theory based 844. Mishram Kagiri says, yes, the problem is not the best. The problem it's not the best for large classes in some public schools. That is basically the problem with CBC. James Njuguna says, not at all. The 844 we have now is a shell of what it was intended. Cecilia Wangombe says it caters for learners' competence, unlike the 844, which is exam-oriented. Samuel Nganga says different. Learners interact with what? With the teachers or something like that. Teresia Kafui says it's different because it is learner-centered and it's not exam-oriented like 844. David Wanyaga says no difference, but we are made to believe so because of political connotations.
Okay, a very strong point from Wanyaga there. So thank you so much. Will allow me to jump question number 3, but then also look at question number 4. As teachers, then how can we maximize on the opportunities which are provided by CBC to promote ESD and also sustainability? Probably we get 2 reactions or 3 so that we save on time.
Can you say on the chat?
I think they can put it on the chat, or if there's anybody who wants to talk, then you can.
Samuel Kiragu says it is learner-centered. It explores learners' talents. How do you maximize the opportunities? That's what I'm waiting for now. And just send in the chat. If you have something to say, just raise your hand. So James Njuguna says, embracing the rich environment that has all it takes to actualize it.
Thank you. The second reaction, so that we move on.
Let's see. There is no other one.
Right then. So I believe we can be able to maximize on that. But if you are coming from Nakuru, then don't ask your students to bring Indian Ocean to your school. That has been the challenge. We must think about the local environment and see how best we can be able to build the students' competencies. Look at the local problems within your region or your county or your locality and be able to address them. The kind of crops which are growing, even when it comes to water purity or pollution, you can do filtration in a very simple way. We can take our students out, and instead of counting cars and lorries along the main road, if they're not coming from the urban setup, then they can be able to look at the shamba and probably take statistics of the crops which are commonly grown within the locality, be able to do the analysis and come up with a report. If they're coming from around the town, then they look at the cars, they look at the lorries and see the highest number when it comes to the statistic or the analysis of the different modes of transport and how they contribute to pollution and the like. The movement of the people, take them to the market, Nakuru town. Let them go to that market and experience. When you talk about water, sometimes you ask students, especially than the ones coming from town, and they cannot be able to connect with the different water sources because they know water comes from a tap. But can you take them to the river? Can you take them to the lake? Can you take them to the water treatment point? And they can realize where water comes from. Can you take them to the forest and they be able to learn about that? So that's part of ESD and it's part of CBC. I say the problem with CBC, it was a bit rushed. We were not prepared for its implementation, but we can be able to maximize on the opportunities. It's being pushed down our throats. We must take it, we must practice it, we must teach, but Some learners and parents, we're really struggling. We must print, but can they draw? You must go to the cyber and download, but can they draw? Or has the government provided resources for the same? Because I really feel for students who are based in the rural areas, sometimes the activities which are given, we can improve on it. Make it more, leave it to the teacher to choose the kind of activity she or wants to the students to undertake to help them to understand certain aspects or certain concepts, to put it in the context of the learning environment based on where they are, whether in an urban area, whether in the dry areas of this country, whether in the coastal area. And that's the only way we'll be able to help this country to achieve sustainability through CBC. Building the right skills. I come from around the lake, I want to be a fisherman. I must be able to learn about those skills from the tender age so that I can gain the right skills and be able to practice in the future. I want to become that doctor. It's not about getting the hair. What about the morals? And someone raised a very critical point recently in a certain forum. Like the quack doctors we are now having, the crooked lawyers we are now having. Remember the times of exam leakage and what we produced. So as a society, now we are paying back for the mistake we did. Because we told our students, there's always a shortcut to success. There's always a shortcut to make money, and see where we are right now. Our politics, and the like. 10 minutes, Kevin. Yeah, 10 minutes and the like. So these are possibilities to promote sustainability within the CBC. I'll be so fast, I'm left with about 2 slides or 3 slides at the most. So how do we help to orient our education to achieve sustainability? The curriculum must be able to accommodate ESD perspectives. We must try to promote theme teaching and theme learning at the different levels of education. Then our programs, they must be localized. I've talked about that. And they must be able to address local social or economic challenges or issues within our society. And we must be able to help our learners to acquire the new skills and knowledge which is needed in the future. You saw what happened when Corona hit us, and even some of us were not competent even to use the computers, even to use our phones for learning. And we were forced to do, virtual learning, remote learning with our students. So remember the churches, remember the schools. I remember attending meetings, and we were being advised not to buy smartphones for our students, not to use phones, not to use, and many other digital gadgets for learning or for preaching. But even the people who criticize all this, we had to turn to the same gadgets for learning and also for preaching until today and the like. So next, the opportunities within a school environment which can help us to implement ESD. The school grounds, I think I've talked about that. Wildlife clubs and even environmental clubs, scouting clubs and activities which are undertaken by the same clubs and the like. Special days, the World Environmental Day, the World Wetland Day, which is coming in February, the World Wildlife Day coming in March, the World Biodiversity Day coming around May, and the like, and many other special UN environmental days which can be able to practice. Sports and drama. We need to have themes for the same. I know we have done it with drugs, political tolerance within this country and the like, but we can choose a theme on environment and the like. Then we have areas where we can be able to reference a bit fast so that we can finish. The education policies, and I've already shown you the document, it's there. And if you need copies, I think through the WCK, we can be able to talk to the Minister of Education so that they can send them to their respective schools. You need this so that you can be able to practice ESD. We need to integrate ESD into our sustainable development, policies and strategies for this country. But if we are talking about altering the boundaries of our forests, taking up spaces which was meant for green spaces or public spaces, our parks and reserves, they are not safe anymore. We must think about that and be able to take the right action. We are developing, but we are developing at what cost? That's why we go down where we said we have to think about the environment, undertake the EIA, see the social impact of our undertakings and the like. Then we must use the whole school approach when it comes to ESD practice. Then all stakeholders must commit to this. And it's part of the agenda of the government. The Big Four agenda talks about all this. So in conclusion, that's what I like to say. Sustainability calls for inclusivity, partnerships, and being conscious about what we are doing to the environment, what's happening within the environment, and what the future means if we continue under the same trends. And simply put, it's not enough for teachers to get a degree or to get a certificate, but they must be prepared for life after college in the classroom. The policy outlines very well how teachers need to be trained, either before they get into the practice or during the time of practice. And I know the government is preparing you on how you can be able to implement the ESD. And then development process occurs only when teachers are nurtured and supported by the different education stakeholders to be able to implement the curriculum. The government is trying, but there are still gaps which we need to address. So my last slide, Kevin, and that boils down to the coronavirus or the COVID period. And that's why we're not able to come to Nakuru, or US teachers were not able to come to Nairobi, and we have a physical training because of the pandemic. So the landscape has changed. I talk about how we need to develop the new skills. In case of another pandemic, we are still within the pandemic period until the president declares the end of the pandemic. We are still putting on the masks. We must tell our students to wear the mask, wash their hands, practice the social distance. But all that what we are being taught to do, it's part and parcel of environmental conservation, environmental practices and the like. So there's always an opportunity where we can be able to change the way we do our business. It's business unusual. We must rethink about our schooling life and how it's done, the teaching and the learning process. And we must be able to change. And we say, crazy period requires for us to also adopt, crazy practices or strategies to be able to overcome the challenges. So COVID period was not expected by anybody. It's a crisis we didn't expect. We never thought we'll be in this for so long. We're not prepared for the same, but we know right now, we know much better. And we must be able to change the way we undertake our life activities, social activities, and economic activities so that we can be able to grow this country. Thank you so much for your time and for listening to me. I've taken a bit of time from the time which was allocated to me. I couldn't do it within an hour. I like it when I can do it within 2 hours, but because of time, kindly allow us to stop at that. If there are any questions, probably I'll take 2 or 3, and then during the discussion period, we can be able to bring it back. So the plenary might take shorter, or we'll decide, Judy will advise on how we can be able to undertake this based on our program. Kevin, I return the session back to you. I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. Benson, you have the question that you have. The forms you are taking also, we are taking your email addresses. So once everything is done, the slides and the documents that are shared, in this workshop will be sent to your email addresses. So make sure on the registration form, the Google form that is on the chat, make sure you use it. You put your name, your sub-county, your contact, your school, and your email address. So the email addresses will be used to send those documents. The contact will be used for any kind of monetary disbursements and whatnot. So we'll have just say like 5 minutes for plenary. So if you have any question, due to time, just write it on the chat. So I'll give you, if you have any question, just write on the chat. Right now, you can do it right now so that you can just head on to ask the panelists the questions that you have. So if you have any question, just write it there. Okay, then it will seem that like there's nobody with a question. David Wanyaga, sorry, has raised his hand. So you can just unmute and ask.
Yes, mine is not a question per se, but I think I use this forum to ask all of us in conservation to pray for this nation. Because as I was going through the lessons from Mr. Emmanuel Gumi, I have learned that we are failing, because I was willing to answer that question. We are failing, and the challenges that we have in the ESD is because we have wrongly placed leaders, wrongly placed lawmakers, wrongly placed almost everything. A few like us are there advocating for it. But who is there in parliament? And that's why the CEO also challenged that we should even go deeper to know which are these bills, but going to who? A challenge. So my request for prayers so that ESD will grow and go to higher heights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wanyaga. That is a good insight. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, thank you. So I'll just use 3 of your minutes to ask you to just give your comments concerning the just done a session, which was introduction to education for sustainable development. So it will be a poll. So just use 3 minutes to answer it. Then we shall move to the next session. So just fill it out. One minute left. 1 minute. There are like 14 people who haven't put their names there, so I'm just waiting for you guys. Now 12 people. Ten people. One minute left. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. There is a question that has been I've seen at the chat. Maybe Mr. Emmanuel can see what he knows about it. Benjamin Kasusia says, a concern, there are some giraffes around Kitui, a region called B2 Yata Ranch. The ranch has been encroached by residents. What is AFU doing to save them?
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Let me just remove my mask. Okay, thank you, Kevin. Actually, I was just typing on the chat, but the reaction I'm telling Kadiwa, I know that area is very popular with giraffes, but from Tonga, I didn't know there are giraffes left there. It's a place called Kandria, and I know they've moved. The giraffes were probably poached, whereas a good number of the Rothschild. There are some remnants of the Maasai, we believe, because some of the giraffes, they have a pattern of the Maasai, if you have been to Mwea. So I didn't know, but if
Mr. Emmanuel,
I have good contacts with the Giraffe Conservation Foundation, Mr. Hadar. We'll follow up and see how best we can be able to move those giraffes to a safe habitat, either within a close area within the county or the counties surrounding that area, or a national park or reserve, which can be able to accommodate them. We're trying as a center, we didn't know, because remember the issue of the giraffes in Wajir, northern Kenya, which are dying because of the prolonged drought within that region. We want to help them, be able to take care of the giraffes by probably digging some boreholes there, and make sure also the local community will also be able to benefit from the same borehole or probably water pumps within that area. Starvation, and also from thirsty because they cannot be able to get enough water. So this one, which is in Yata, I think it can be done. It's only that the issue has not been able to reach our desk or the KWS desk, but I'll be able to follow up. But I need to get some good information about where exactly they are, how many, and probably what needs to be done. If you have some photos or someone a local person we can conduct, I'll be able to do that within, a very short time period to conduct KWS and see, as an organization which has interest in conserving giraffes, how best we can be able to save them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the reply. Mr. David Wanyaga, are you having your hand up, or is it from the previous time? David Wanyaga?
I think the previous time. I'm okay. I'm just listening.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Very
so,
contented.
We'll go for a lunch break. We'll go for lunch break and be back by, that is if there is no, we'll go for lunch break and be back at 2:30. Okay? Thank you very much for effective in the procedure up to now, and thank you very much. So I'll ask us to break, and then we'll get back at 2:30. This will remain on until next time.
Done. Just leave it on.